presentation today will be on online student success. It's not about the software. And our presenter is, I actually had to write this down, Doctor of Management, Swirl Student. He has a Doctor of Management degree in Community College Policy Administration. He is the chair of the Open SUNY Advisory Council, and he's the director of e-learning at MCC and instructional technology. So a couple quick announcements before we get started, because I know you're all chomping at the bit to be here and listen to not me. Please turn your every device to silent. I know I can see a lot of them in the room. If you're going to have it play, at least have a fun ringtone. That would be great. We will embarrass you though if you do. And just want to let you know too that this session is being recorded for later. So for those who are listening later on, welcome. And without further ado, Dr. Dugan, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. So, welcome. I got inspired to do this presentation after working with Starfish and some other softwares for the past 8 years, and listening to people talk about how they're using it. I'm one of the mentors for the Starfish implementation. We have Civitas at our school. We have lots of different pieces of software, all designed to help students succeed. And I've also had the privilege of coming to many of your campuses. I did 9 institutional readinesses as facilitator, and I heard some things and got the opportunity to just kind of aggregate all this information in my brain. And some things kind of stuck out to me. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to start this little movement that I wanted to do. And I wanted to base it on data and find out what was actually happening on campuses. So it's not about the software. I'm not here today to say software isn't good, because why would we be here then, right? We wouldn't have a job. What I'm here to talk about, though, is it's not all about the software. What I heard, which was the most troubling, was we're going to go buy Starfish, we're going to go buy Civitas, we're going to buy all these great pieces of software, and that's going to save our students. They're going to increase our retention rates by 5, 6, 7% just by buying the software and implementing it. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Software, by design, is a communication tool, right? All of these things that I'm going to list, actually, where is this thing? All of these things that I'm going to list are all simply communication tools. And in SUNY, we have lots of different examples of that. We've got Starfish, we've got EAB, Civitas, Persistence Plus, Adviso, Ellucian Advise. All these pieces of software exist in our system. Someone's using this somewhere. And all of them have one intention: keeping our online students, or all of our students really, but I'm here to talk about online students today, keep them in their seats, keep them coming back. Well, there's a lot of reasons why online students don't come back, and it's not because they're getting 15 different emails telling them they haven't logged in 5 days, right? It's because there's other problems going on in their lives, right? And we know this. But how we approach this and how we support them is what becomes important. So what are these things telling us? They're giving us a lot of information, especially the Civitases and the predictive analytic models. Software is telling us a lot of information about the students that aren't succeeding. And they're giving us these propensity score matching models, right, to tell us this student has the propensity to not succeed, right? That's what Civitas, that's what PAR, and a lot of those pieces of software tell us. It identifies these students, and I've used the word, it profiles these students, saying that this is what you're expected to not be successful in. I have a little problem with that, right? Because profiling, as we know, you usually move in the direction you're thinking, right? And that's not a good thing. But it does give us ways to identify on a large scale some of these possibilities that might happen and design interventions around them. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Figure that out. This has given us feedback, so maybe I should have made it a little more accessible and put black. You know, I applied this template like 4 minutes ago without checking the whole thing. Sorry. One of the things we're going to talk about today is some of the things that it does show us, the software does show us by using the software. And one of those things are some of the weaknesses we have, especially in advising online students. Advising and supporting online students is really what we're talking about. The other thing it shows us, and I've learned this a lot using Civitas lately, is course sequencing issues. If you take this course before this course, you're more likely to not succeed. And that's true. And I have seen that work. And our flag-based software, this is a starfish model that we're using with 30 different things. Basically, we can use the current course data to raise information and alert students when they're not showing up for their courses, when they're not doing things they're supposed to be doing. The best versions of these really are just CRMs, right? Customer managers that really just communicate with people. They're at best a communication tool, an analytic and communication tool, but a communication tool. So let's look at the one that tells us they're the best in the class, EAB. For those of you that are using EAB, you'll know how it's a good system. So there was an article inside Higher Ed recently for Georgia State University. Georgia State University leads the way. Last year, they scheduled more than 52,000 appointments through this system for students. 52,000 appointments. That's a great ROI, right? You think, well, this is a system that is helping our students succeed by doing appointments. And we know for a fact that students that have an appointment with an advisor are more likely to succeed, right? Every one of those systems tell us that. And our guts tell us that. There's a big thing I usually, when I'm sitting in one of these meetings, I have this little sign I write to myself. It just says, duh. I put it, yep, duh. Because obviously a lot of this stuff, we know these things, right? But what they don't tell you, and EAB is not cheap. And for that many people inside of Georgia State University, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars they spent to do this. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. What they don't tell you is technology isn't the only reason. On top of using this software for early alert and for scheduling, they ended up hiring 100 people to do the interventions, to do face-to-face interventions on students that were obviously having problems. So it wasn't the software that solved the problem. It was hiring 100 people to actually stand in or call or get in front of or bring into their office students to be successful. So what does it do really? One of my favorite things that drives people at MCC crazy is they talk about the fact that this software is really good at ripping off the Band-Aids and showing us where we're not good, right? Most of us don't want to admit those things. Most of us don't want to admit where we're insufficient in supporting students. Let me give you some examples and some painful truths. We have 1, 2, I think maybe another one, concierges here, right? If you're a concierge, raise your hand at your institution. Okay, 2. Okay. How many students do we work with at MCC? Last year, 8,200 students went through our online classes at MCC. FLCC, same thing, thousands of students, right? Your typical faculty advisor has between 50 and 60 students they work with. These students never come on campus if they're online students, right? Fully online students never come to campus, never have the opportunity to do face-to-face. In 2010, we did a Next Generation Learning Grant in Sudi with Herkimer and Oswego and myself when I was at Finger Lakes. And we created this model of student interaction using the concierge model. And it was a way for us to humanize our institutions. But we're asking these people to work with thousands of students. On any campus that implements the concierge model, there are thousands of students that at any time are the responsibility of these people for student success. 60 for faculty, thousands for the concierge. So what happens in that? In my experience with these 9 colleges that I've talked to, most of them have a model where for advising, they have a e-advisor, or they have someone in the office that is designated to answer the emails for online students, right? They're answering emails for online students. They have no training in online, what it takes to be successful in online courses. They have no background. What they've done is taken a face-to-face model and tried to plant it on top of an online program. It doesn't work, right? OLC in the project we do for institutional readiness says, do not do this. Do not put face-to-face people and make them responsible for online students. Online students are different. I know we all don't like to admit that sometimes, but they are. Online student support is often marginalized by automation. Anybody use Smart Thinking or NetTutor or the software that we use to support students? Sure. Why do we do that? Because we don't have a really good cost-effective being the key, way to support these students academically, right? So we use software, right? Which connects them to a real person, right? In these particular cases, and it is cost-effective for us to do that, and they are great. I use Smart Thinking on our campus, right? I spend probably $7,000–8,000 on Smart Thinking a year, right? How much money do you spend in tutoring face-to-face students? Hundreds of thousands of dollars in the salaries of those people to support the students. The problem with this is now, and at MCC, we've gone from a composition of our students in the past 5 years alone of about 18% of our students were online students 5 years ago. This spring, 31% of the students were online students. And we're spending $8,000 to support those students and hundreds of thousands to support tutoring, academics, the reason they're here, right? The reason they're at our schools in tutoring systems by sending them somewhere else. And the other thing is what I call the Amazon syndrome. When people do talk, and this is something I put into a training I did for frontline employees that are talking to online students. When we talk to students, a lot of times we hear people say, well, just go to the web page, and on the web page you'll find this, this, and this. Well, first of all, if you've been to your own websites, I expected that reaction, right?
I used to teach web design.
You can't, it's very difficult to find it because we pack so much information. And honestly, websites for colleges are now designed to be outward facing, right? They're marketing tools. They're not necessarily support tools, right? So the Amazon, have you ever called Target customer service? If they said to you, I'm having a problem with my account, or I'm having problems finding this on your web page, well, let's go to the web page. That's what I'm having problems with. Yeah, well, you signed it on our web page. There's instructions there for you to read about how to get around on our web page. They called you for a reason. They want to talk to a person that can guide them through. If you were to do that, if you were to take an online class, and you call someone and says, I can't log in, well, the instructions are right there on the front page. If I could do that, I wouldn't be calling you, right? But so many times I see this, I hear this comment that just go to the web page. And I'm not throwing MCC under the bus on this one. This is every place I've talked to, right? This is every place that I've talked to in the past 2 years. So we're replacing us with digital information, right? What we hold that up is, well, we're online learning instructors, right? Sit in the student seat for a minute. So all of this creates an invisible student, right? What we're dealing with now, this is my favorite phrase that I heard one time, and it's been something I held on to. We've created these invisible students. These are the students that don't stand in line for advising. They don't stand in line for financial aid help. They don't stand in line for admissions. They're the ones that are online, on the phone, waiting for 45 minutes to an hour for somebody to help them in those offices. And I've heard that time and time again. Our students are complaining that our support systems do not support them in the way they expect to be supported. If the students spent 45 minutes on the phone with Amazon on hold, they would not be shopping at Amazon anymore. They'd be going somewhere else. And if you listen to Jeff Salingo or if you watch he's presented here, he's presented all over, and he talks about our concept of the Swirl Student, right? The Swirl Student, Swirl, S-W-I-R-L. A Swirl Student will aggregate information from our credits from 4 or 5 different campuses and come to yours to be 50% or more and get their degree from you, right? But they're getting half of their credits from somewhere else. If we are to be successful inside SUNY with our open enrollment where we can transfer credits now between cross-registration, right? Our students can register at any one of your campuses now with no additional cost to take classes. That's going to it is creating this huge swirl model, right? If we don't support those students in a way that they need to be supported, they're going to start bouncing around, and they're going to find some great experience at another campus, and they're going to say, you know what? Goodbye. I'm going there because they know how to take care of me. So this online student become an afterthought. I just kind of said all this. But I found a lot of these images of invisible students, so I thought it was cool, so I put this up there. Right? I mean, that's an invisible student, and this is an invisible student. Our students are different. Online students are taking it for a reason. The average age of the students at MCC is 21 years old. The average age of our online students at MCC is 26 years old. The number of people that have kids, the number of people that have jobs where they can't come to our campus is significantly higher than it is for the face-to-face. These are not traditional students. And we know, we've heard Peter Shea's information or research for years now talking about the success rates of 18-year-olds versus 25-year-olds in online classes. 25-year-olds versus 18-year-olds. A 25-year-old has experienced Amazon's customer service. They've experienced walking into Walmarts and getting all the help they want by walking into the line and doing what they need to. Anybody can return anything at any time. Or, if you don't help me, I'm going to blah, 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 right? They can't do that with us. Our students are different. They have the experience of being, don't shudder, a customer, right? We have this horrible fear of the student as customer model because we think then we're entitling them, right? Students are customers, in my opinion, until they walk into that classroom. Once they walk into that classroom, they stop being a customer. And I use the model of a health club, right? You walk into a health club, they have dynamic salespeople that will sell you, and you don't even know you're being sold. You just walk out of there realizing that you just signed up for 2 years at $99 a month, but then that turned into $149 a month somehow. And you got to show up, and I'm going to do this because they've sold you in a way that is magical, right? But if you don't go to that health club to work out, I don't know if anybody's ever done this, signed up for a health club and then not gone. This didn't happen by itself. That's really what happens. That customer service model up to the point where you're working out, and then they go to the health club and going to class, right? That's where you're supposed to be pumping iron and doing all the things to get yourself in shape, right? So that's not the same thing as the people that are selling and doing things up front and supporting them and billing them and everything else that we're talking about with students. Our students never walk into the health club, right? They never have the opportunity to actually work out. They're doing the Richard Simmons at-home version with the videotapes. Right? They're just buying the videotapes. No, don't, please God, don't do that. But they are different. They're different and they're there for a reason. It's because they can't come to the health club. They can't come in the door. And what does that mean? They all feel like numbers. I don't know how many times I've heard students tell me, I just felt like a number. Right? And the reason is because they are. Sometimes the only way we know our online students is by their user ID. Or their student number, right? Stop doing this. We have to stop this immediately. We have to stop treating students like they're a number. We have to create services on our campuses that make our campuses real. We've got to create, if you're going to do advising, use Zoom, use Collaborate, use one of the tools that you have. Now I'm getting to the solution on this stuff. This is my soapbox part that I get to talk about. Use video chat for advising, right? Let them see a person. Let them talk to a person. Let them read the body language of the person they're talking to. Okay? Solve that problem. Right now, we're in the process of creating a Netflix TV channel type thing on our campus where the students can watch any student government. They can use all the live streams. They can see all the different things that on-campus students, they can actually participate in a they will be able to do webinars. Every one of our students has the ability, of our online students has the ability to go to a webinar. We do 10 to 12 of them at the beginning of each semester for orientation. It's not go to our orientation site. It's come see us. And I sit there with our colleagues, and they sit there on the chat room and answer chat rooms, just like we go to every SUNY meeting in the world now, right? Same way. We can do that. We're supposed to be able to. Yes?
I actually do online advising using Collaborate. I have online office hours using Collaborate. How do I? They don't come anyway. They still don't come. I have. I'm there. they're still not coming.
So
I offer extra credit.
if this were the hour and 15 minutes I thought it was going to be, I would love to talk about that for a long time. But I don't have that, unfortunately. So I'll talk to you offline about that one, okay? I'd be happy to do that. We have the opportunities now for rapid application development, for putting, how is your mobile app for your campus? How many of your students do you think are taking their online course on their phone? What are you doing? So the main interface with your campus, which is usually now an app, is meh, right? Next week I'm looking at 3 different things on our campus. I'm part of the team that's looking at those things. Because the first impression your students have of your campus with either the website or the app is how they'll think about your campus. Online student success does not start when they sit in the classroom. Online student success starts with the very first time they go to your website or download your app and look at your campus. The first impressions, you've heard this, first impressions are lasting, right? If that's the impression they have of your campus, you're not going to win. You're not going to keep them. And we are not supporting. We, in this community, of the instructional technologies community, need to be a force for that. And meeting them where they are. How much time do I have?
10.
Okay. 5. No, 10. Thank you. There's a phrase, meeting the students where they are. Sorry, hitting your ear. Guy in the back is going crazy with the sound because I keep hitting the microphone. Meeting students where they are, right? There are some models that are being implemented right now that are solving the problems that we have for online learning. Finger Lakes is doing it. I certainly know Herkimer is doing it with their HighFlex model, where students can come if they want to class, or they can watch the stream. Finger Lakes is doing their streaming model, streaming classes, where they can sit at their desktops, or sit at their remote locations, because it's a long way to go meet with students. We're starting to do this. We're starting to meet students where they are. And that's going to be critical. That's going to be important. So what else are we doing? Where is she? Molly? Molly Mott in the back from SUNY Canton is leading a community of practice on through SUNY that's designed to support students online, right? She's doing some incredible things at SUNY Canton. She's leading this group of, there's 5 of us in the 5 colleges in the group that are coming up with ideas for adapting our students' success model and support model and student service model to today's online students. Molly's got a presentation coming up on, here's your shameless plug. When is it? 3 o'clock today? Okay. Go to that. No, we didn't. I don't care, Molly. You know that. At 3 o'clock today, she's going to go through the research that she's just finished, and I was supposed to do, but I didn't do it. She went out and talked to students and asked them, what do you want? This is online students. What do you want to feel connected to our campus? It wasn't more starfish flags. It wasn't more nudges. It was people. Let me talk to people. Let me see people live. Let me be part of it. Let me go back and watch my class on my terms, at my time of day. Record them. Online clubs and organizations. Things that make them feel part of the campus. That's not software. Student success is not about sending them flags. Flags are great ways to communicate. Nudges are great ways to communicate and analyze the data and see how we did in retrospect many times, but nothing. And I can't believe I'm saying this some days, because I was like, all about online learning. We're going to automate everything. Everything's going to be like competency-based education. We're going to do it. Man, you forget that people are people sometimes. What else can you do? If you don't have a person, online students need a person. In 2010, when we started this project, I had the unique opportunity to hire Mo at Finger Lakes. Mo was a person who understood Finger Lakes at the time. She got it. She worked there as an adjunct. She was an English professor, but she knew our students. The students at Finger Lakes are different than the students at Monroe, are different than the students at UB, right? And you need someone in place on your campus that is their person. Who is my person I can call? I'm going to call Mo, right? I left Finger Lakes, went and was fortunate enough to find Sandy. Sandy, who had been working for the college for 18 years in student support. She came over and became my concierge. She knows our students. She talks to our, most importantly, she listens to our students, right? And then every other week we get together and I hear her report of, what are they saying? What are students saying today? And she's more than happy to tell me, right? How many students have things? How many students have you cried with this week? How many students have you talked to and listened to their stories? Have you ever listened to some of these stories? And what's cool is when you hear the stories of the students that just got kudos, right? They just got an attaboy. The thing that blew me away when I started working with Starfish is a student that came up to me, knew I was a Starfish person, came up to me in tears and said, you know what? Nobody's ever acknowledged the fact that I was doing this right. They always tell me when I'm wrong. They got the big red pens out on my papers, but nobody's ever acknowledged the fact that I'm doing this right. That's a humanistic approach, right? So bottom line is, in my opinion, you've come to this to hear my soapbox, right? In my opinion, we have dehumanized the online student. We've made them invisible. There's your community practice, Mal. Pay attention to what they're doing up there at Canton in our community practice, because we've got a lot of good ideas and you can all get into it. You will all be able to see the work that we're doing and Molly's doing as far as things with esports and virtual clothing drives to get your online students clothes and food and all the things that they need, just like our face-to-face students, but in a different way. We're meeting them where they are, and that's critical. So, starting a revolution. I've actually bought the website invisiblestudents.org. Whatever it says, student. Thank you. Invisiblestudent.org. Right now, if you go to invisiblestudent.org, you'll just get site not found. It's not there. It's not up there yet. I'm developing it right now. I'm going to be soliciting on Workplace for writers, for stories, for student stories of success and things that you've done to be successful. This is not a SUNY-facing thing. This is a global, right? It's on the World Wide Web. So it must be right. But it's going to be talking about those students, those pictures of those invisible students, because it's my goal to bring attention to the students and how we're talking to online students and how we're making them successful. In our doodle research that we saw, almost every college had a 10% differential between success rates of online students versus face-to-face. 10%. The reason? There's a lot of them. Technology comes into play, but one of the main reasons we saw was the feeling of isolation. That's not solved by getting a flag saying you missed the last test. That's solved by having a person on the other end of the phone.
That's assuming that they put the correct phone number in, and that they, and the right email.
So one of the things about students is they are human, and when they sign up for our class, what she's talking about is when they sign up for our colleges, a lot of times they have a burner phone and a Gmail account that goes away. But it doesn't mean we don't stop trying to get in touch with them.
3 times.
That
Close my.
That doesn't mean we stop trying to get in touch with them. There are other ways. If they're residential students, you can knock on their door, but that's a different presentation. Any questions?
Earlier when you talked about profiling, then you have to make a distinction between tendencies that plausibly probably come about and profiling, which then is decisions being made on the basis of this data here, then you're effectively making a cause-effect conclusion. You have to make that distinction here in terms of tendencies versus.
So the argument about propensity score matching and predictive analytics is it causal or is it just correlation, right? Is the fact that we have profiled these students causing the issue, or is it correlated to the fact that these students who have these models, right? And those of you that know statistics understand what I'm talking about. I don't even understand what I'm talking about most of the time with this, but, so if you profile a student, does that mean that that's going to happen to that student, right? I think that's what you're saying, isn't it?
In other words, if somebody says, you have these data, therefore you're going to get this outcome. Whereas it's more like, these are tendencies that could, that plausibly, probably be there. But probable does not mean certainty.
Right, absolutely. So 80% of the students that get a C in English 101, 80% of those students will graduate, or 70% of those students will graduate, as opposed to people that get a B, 90% of those students will graduate. Right? That's how predictive analytics works in Civitas and in PAR, which are the two big ones in SUNY. But it doesn't take into account the 20 to 30% of those students that are marginal. And I have a problem with that causal, saying the C caused you to get to not be successful, as opposed to there just happens to be a correlation between those things. Right. And so and they are constantly on a daily basis changing the algorithms in these programs to make them more accurate, and they're doing really well. But I still, the human side of me still has an issue with it. Yeah. That's it.
Maybe a sales pitch for Starfish and these other things that I've heard is that it automates and takes the responsibility away from the faculty member for chasing down students. This is all automated. So now we're going back to, again, it's people. How do you get your instructors to say, yes, it is you that has to reach out? Because what I get sometimes from them is, well, I don't do that with my on-campus students. So if there's that empty chair for the first 3 weeks of class, I'm not running after that student, and now you're telling me I should if it's the no login.
So some of the, and I'm out of time right now, but, and I'd love to talk to people. Right. But the thing that let's talk about that offline, because I could go on for that. 1 month. And if you want to submit anything, my email, I had my email address up there. You can see me, I'm on Workplace. I'm on Workplace. Send me a message on Workplace. I'll be happy to talk to you and tell you how to submit things. But watch for it on Workplace, because that's where I'm going to put it. All right? Thank you all very much for coming.